the one that's picking them up.
So I wonder if
A lot.
damage.
Madam Chairman.
Okay, 7:03-ish, I'll call the meeting to order, please. And you all have a copy of the agenda, so I'll entertain a motion to approve that or make a change if anyone wishes.
Approve as submitted.
I'll second that.
Those in favor? Okay, we also have 7 minutes from the last meeting.
Looks good to me, but I can't do anything with
Okay, that leads up to,
And I wrote them, so I
you
don't know.
can't. I couldn't. So,
Move to approve.
I'll second that.
excellent. All those in favor who can? Okay, very good, thank you. Okay, for old business, we have the, I will pass these out. I emailed them to everybody, but I thought there was a chance some of you might have made a copy. I also added one thing that we had discussed, so I'll do this way.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
The addition that I made was, we had talked about the fact that we want to encourage the districts to be bounded by lot lines as opposed to just straight lines randomly drawn from point A to point B. And where we left it last time, we just had seen that for locations, and then it occurred to me there was no reason we couldn't make that suggestion about lot lines being followed right there. So that was added for, I put that on all 3. And the rest of it is just the language, to the best of my recollection, that we had discussed. We also had a notation last time about including some language for contractor storage yards. So if that's something we're going to do under non-residential uses, we should probably do that at this point before we go much further. So if anybody wants to tackle that language or decide that we shouldn't. Oh, by the way, on the back, we have R3 with a double space. Because last time we were so busy making corrections, there was no room to write it or read it. So I said, well, since we're going to plow through this one, I might as well leave room. So that's why that looks strange. But
And R1 is along the Route 1 corridor.
no, R1 is in 2 places. It's there you go.
Right here, it's in the new road and the
Oh, okay, the
Clearview,
development.
Liberty Acres.
Liberty Acres and Clearview Acres. And then it goes basically from the turnpike down Limerick Road. Includes portions of Campground Road and Mountain Road, well, it'll go,
No,
just a
not
piece
Mountain
of Mountain Road. This is Eastern Trailway. Can everybody see this? Don't you? Just go up a little bit more. Here's the Eastern Trail. So, and here's the turnpike. So it goes basically from this section in here to the turnpike and just a portion of Mountain Road, and then proceeds down from basically the Eastern Trail down to the proposed DB1 and 2 districts, which are right about at Strickland Lane. You know, Strickland Lane is. And Indian Acres is across the street. Actually, it's down the street. So it's basically in 2 areas. It's split. Interestingly enough, right in through here. So, I'm not,
I would almost be prone to, because I know we wanted to include the campgrounds in Hilltop Drive, I'd almost be prone to take this out, you know, because there's not that many close
Well-
homes in that area for our one.
Before we tackle that piece,
Yeah, I know.
Good. For the benefit of those of you who were not at the last meeting, what we did with this language was we had taken the language from the original comp plan, which described R1 in 2 places almost identically, merged it together, and then we played with it until we were happy with what it said. So that's what this is, and that was what was accomplished in the last meeting. So I guess the first step is, for the folks of you who were here, does what we have in print reflect what we agreed to at the last meeting? In which case, we can put that part to bed, unless we want to change something. And then the other thing is, the suggestion at the end of the last meeting that we address contractor storage yards. And now I'm going to go back to Tad. I have a question about that myself, but I guess, let me phrase my question first, because that may help. How is language for contractor storage yards going to make things any different than the reference we make to home occupations and home businesses?
Significantly.
Okay.
There's two different types of contractor storage yards. There's contractor storage yard 1, which is basically designed for residential districts. And it has limitations on the kinds of vehicles that you can have there, which is greater than what you can have as a contractor, a normal contractor right now. And when I say normal contractor right now, contractors who operate with only a limited number of vehicles and no axles greater than 2 axles, and they do not have employees come to the site, and all of their jobs are done off-site, and they store most of their equipment on the site. Those contractors are not regulated. There is no restriction on them. They can be anywhere. When they get if they get a situation where their employees meet at the site, or if they're using vehicles that have more than 2 axles, or they start storing material in significant quantities on the site, then they are considered to be a commercial use and must move to one of the business zones. Planning board recognized that that could be a bit of a hardship, and so they came up with 2 different contractor storage yards. One was the one that would, contractor storage yard 1 is intended to be in the residential districts. Contractor storage yard 2 is intended to be in the business district. Contractor storage yard has certain limits. I think I gave that all out to you a long time ago. And the problem the planning board has struggled with was whether contractor storage yard actually fit in the R1 district. And what they came up with a compromise was that to have a contractor storage yard in the R1 district, it was based on land area. And it was, I believe, 5 acres or more for you to be able to have a contractor storage yard in the R1. The other ones, it was not restricted, basically.
Okay, now I have 2 questions.
Okay.
You're-
If you went from 1 to 2, this is bad. We're going exponential.
Your first statement about contractor storage yard 0 being unregulated, does that mean that qualifies as a home business situation?
No, that, we will keep that same condition. There's no intention of changing that. That's not even, that's just basically a use that's permitted by right. And you're not even called a contractor storage, you're called a tradesman.
Okay, so that does, if I recall previous discussions, that does kind of put it under the aegis of a home occupation.
It's better than a home occupation because you don't have to get a permit.
Okay,
All you have to do is get a business permit from the code enforcement officer, which is the building permit.
okay.
A home occupation, you do have to get actually a permit from the staff review committee.
Got it.
Okay.
And then what you're referring to would be acceptable in R1 would be contractor storage yard 1.
One. Well, it could be 2. I mean, the planning board never really finished that portion. They're still struggling. There's still some struggle over the contractor storage yard 2 being in that district. Because we have 2 contractor storage yards right now that are in that district.
And am I correct in that the contractor storage yard ordinance piece has not as yet gone to town meeting and been
It has
approved?
not gone to town meeting.
Okay.
Several reasons. Number one, there was some issues on whether or not that would be a problem with the comp planning committee. And number two, they didn't come to a final conclusion on what to do with the R1 district, because the board is split on it. Or I should say, there are a certain number of members on the board who still want to discuss this issue. Because there are those who still believe it is not appropriate, unless it's a very large lot. So 5 acre may not be enough. You may pump it up to more than 5 acres. And the reason being that, very frankly, is they're looking at ones that exist, and one is Mark Welch's, Welch and Sons, and the other one is Riverside. Those are in the R1 district, and they are larger operations. They've been there forever. And actually, Mark Welch's, because he does earth moving, has to get a permit every 3 years, just to store material on his site, because of the quantity of materials that he does.
And what kind of acreage do those,
20
Site.
acres and 10.
okay, so they're well above the 5.
Well, fine. Although Peter is talking about doing a subdivision, so if he does that subdivision, it could pose a big problem. But he would be a non-conforming use, is what he would be.
We love those.
No, we're trying to get rid of that term. We're trying to make everybody compliant and conforming in one way or the other. But he would probably, if he were to subdivide before this were to go in, he would have to be a non-conforming use. Whereas Mark, we're trying to just give him, and actually a couple other ones that are, actually they are too. This would cover a lot of, the whole idea of and it's not a contractor storage yard, it's a contractor yard. The whole idea is to cover all of those people who have been working on it as a contractor yard for literally, in some cases, decades. And you knew this was a linchpin issue when we were discussing the townhouse corner district, planning board law. It was a great concern. Our objective is to get all of the existing contractor yards that are in the residential districts into a conforming status, one way or the other. So if we're looking at contractor yards, we're looking really at future yards. And if we are to do, I should back up, I made a mistake. The first premise of the contractor storage yard is if you meet minimum requirements, when this passes, all existing contractor yards are permitted where they stand. And then the ordinance then pertains to any new ones that come in after this comes into play. So my mistake, I forgot all about the first part, which is critical.
Yeah.
So people like Mark Welch and Peter basically would be considered to be conforming uses, assuming that, yeah, because of their prior existence, and assuming that they meet the minimum standards, there's some buffering issues and so forth. The other, and then any new ones that come in must meet that 5 acre standard then, or 10 acre, depending on which one they want to do. And that's the issue. That's really the issue for the planning board is, is a contractor yard appropriate in the R1 district, regardless of who's already there? Is it appropriate? And that's something that maybe they're going to kick over to you. As the comp plan committee is saying, is that a scale use on a 1 acre scale, 1 acre district that's appropriate? Especially if the intent is we're going to continue with R1 and 1 acre zoning, which isn't urban, but it is dense development for an Arundel.
Yeah.
Then is that use appropriate in that kind of district, in that kind of higher density district? And that's the issue that you folks could actually discuss and debate.
I'm a small town construction guy. Maybe I've got a couple of employees.
Yep.
I've got my truck,
Yep.
and maybe I've got one of those trailers with all my tools in and everything like that, that I keep on my property. And I haul off on occasion. Am I if I store that trailer with the equipment and maybe some materials in it on my property, does that make me number one?
Well, you might be exempt.
I'm just trying to get a feeling for what in the world we're trying to regulate here.
Well, what we're trying to regulate are guys who go beyond that, what you're talking about.
Yeah, but that troubles me if we're gonna get into that. I mean, that's
Well, that's
a guy just run his business out of his,
Yeah,
his
that's
house,
a,
not having an office, and,
well, as he might do home office there and he meets his guys on the site.
Right. And
Yeah,
that's-
that right now is a non-regulated use, that's a permitted use.
Right.
Okay, and we would continue to allow
Right.
that. The contractor yard is the next step from that.
So what's the next step after
That
that?
would be like things paving on South Waterboro Road in alignment, kind of going out of the town on this one. But where they store their dump trucks and their pavement grinders and,
That
All
might
that
be,
stuff.
that might be in a two category.
Yeah.
I think that one would be in a two category. But let's use Peter Lovejoy, there's a good example. Or that's really a situation where he's got maybe one triaxle, maybe two triaxles, that's about it. And then some equipment that he stores on the site, and then he takes it off the site. And maybe his crew will come and visit him there, will come and drop the trucks off and then take the equipment out. That's the kind of activity we're talking about when we're talking about a contractor yard. One, a smaller one that doesn't get into too big of a set of equipment. And if you, I'm sure you don't have it with you, but we actually have pictures. We drew pictures of the kind of equipment based I believe, on DOT standards, on the DOT taxation standards, so Schedule 40 and Schedule 30, I think they were. Tell me, we took them right from your sheet. Let's still look at them.
The number of
I
axles
can't
and
even,
all that.
it was based on the number of axles.
And that's how the division is being defined.
Yeah, it's based on the number of equipment, number of employees, number of trips. You can't do it on trips, it's based on the equipment that's stored on the site.
you talking Lovejoy, that's the one that's on Log Cabin Road?
You pick any of them. Pick the
Well,
log
which
cabin
one
one.
example did you use?
The one I was using was Limerick Road, right across from Mark Walsh, Riverside.
Oh, Riverside.
But let's use, you can use any of them. Use the one on Log Cabin Road. Use Richard's on John Clough. Richard was the one who was talking, who was adamant about including contractor yards in the Townhouse Corner District with the planning board, and I know some of you, were following that. Richard, was probably one of the older yards in the town, and he has all sorts of different equipment that he puts out of there, both construction, both building and earth moving. So he has all sorts of machinery. It's really a question of how, what's appropriate in these residential districts. What's appropriate in an R1, an R2, an R3, or an R4?
Is the assumption here that the person, the operator, also has their residence on the same property?
That is one of the assumptions, yeah.
Is it a requirement?
I'd have to look.
Of course, naturally, I didn't bring that, did I? Let's see if I put it in here. That's great, I handed it out to you folks, but I'm doing it in my own book. All right, guess what?
Is this it? Right here, Ted, is this the type of building you're talking? Is this the, or is it the revised, you have a revised one?
Let's say 21.
Yeah.
That's close enough.
So maybe copy.
Either that or I'll find it on here. Oh, geez, what year was that? I might not even have it on this computer. Ah, what was the date you had on this thing?
I don't think I have it.
Oh, wonderful. Well, this might be, okay. Oh, yeah, this is all, well, maybe not. We did, we might have done it before. I don't remember the answer. Yeah, I don't have everything I had on my computer at work on this, just little thing. No. So, okay, sorry.
what the ordinance suggests.
Yeah,
I mean, we can make a requirement that they have to reflect in the ordinance when they write it again.
right.
So, Dot and I were just having a short discussion while you were looking that up. And if you recall, when we did the Kate's Butter agricultural processing and demonstration facility ordinance,
Right.
because it's an unusual use in a residential zone, one of the requirements was that they include as part of the operation a residence.
Right.
I don't see this as any different. Because if you're living there, as opposed to using it just as a pick-up and drop-off spot, you are likely to treat the situation a little differently than if it's just vacant land, you're dropping off your equipment.
Well, you know, it's a very good point, because the whole purpose of having a yard in the first place is, I mean, in a residential district, it's the assumption that you have a residence there.
Right.
And in other contractor yards that I've done in other communities, it's always been required that you have a residence there. In
Well,
some
I guess I'd
cases,
like to make the leap, if we do this at all, from assumption to requirement
For a one.
for a one.
For a one. Two would be basically a business use that would be.
And if it's in a business district, then
Doesn't.
it's not resident required.
Okay. Well, that would be a very good, that would work.
I'm sure the planning board can make that work. And I think that's the intent, I don't know if it's in there, it's frankly been like 2 years since we worked on this. So, I wanted to include it before we move on. But, that would be an excellent thing to do in a residential district, and the question would be, that would be R1, 2, and possibly 3, if we still have 3. R4 is still a mixed-use district that's not necessarily residential, is my understanding. Am I
Well, it's
correct in
rural,
that?
rural conservation, but it's always been sort of considered residential, but let's cross that bridge when we get there.
Or drive off it, whatever.
Watch for the guardrails, but, yeah, Bud?
I have a question, Mitch told you, he lives off the old Apford Road, he has quite a large tract of land. He is on private road to get on his land. His equipment is on 111, and can he have his business there?
That's yet to be determined.
Oh,
Where is it?
Yeah.
that's Foley. You know, by the, right on top of the hill on.
Oh, the logging out.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, logging.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, he is there.
Well, yeah, he's in a mixed-use district
He is-
anyway.
he is, yeah,
He's
he
not in a
is.
residential district.
Oh, so you can have his equipment there?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, he's been
I don't know.
operating out of that for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, because everything from, well, no, hold it. He's in Biddeford there.
Yeah, but he lives in Arundel.
I know, I'm not familiar with the location of his other spot.
You see, you go on the Elm Alpha Road, just before you get to the bridge, on your right-hand side, he's got a gravel driveway, and he's tucked in the back. You can't even see nothing from the road.
Okay.
And he has equipment there too?
Well, I don't know, once in a while I go there, and he's got a pickup truck and
All
a
right, so that would put him in R2.
logging truck. I didn't know how,
On
you know.
the bridge? I'm not sure, which bridge? I'm confused by
The one that goes over the pike, right?
Yeah.
Oh, the
Yeah.
pipe?
Yeah.
Oh.
So he's got to be right at the end of the Alfred Road,
He's-
No, that's not the Alfred Road.
Old Alfred Road.
Old
Elm
Alfred
Alpha
Road.
Road, yeah.
The old
Right.
Alfred.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's right in here somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, he's in the R2
So
district.
he's in R2.
I think he probably understands.
I don't know, you know, I'd have to look at the ordinance again, you know, to see, because he would be limiting, that's the point. The number of equipment that you're allowed in the district is limited. The intent, the obvious intent is that you want people to be able to use their land, to be able to do their business,
Yeah.
and not throw them off as soon as they start getting successful. Because the current ordinance is such that once you get your first triax, you're out of there. You know, you're no longer legal. Now you can't be a home occupation, and you've got to go to a business zone. That's basically the way our ordinance is written right
Okay.
now. And the question is, and the planning board has debated this and agreed, that's not necessarily good, a good thing. It should be a transition where you can grow a little bit more, be a good neighbor and take care of making sure you're not an impact on people. And then when you get so big that you have so many different types of equipment, they may have to move to Route 111 or whatever other business, mixed-use district that we decide would be appropriate. Thank you.
But since he's already there, that puts him in the category of permitted use.
Well, his existing facility though is in I don't think he operates out, I mean, he may source some stuff, but he operates out of Bedford. All the guys come out of Bedford.
Well, yeah, but
They come and get permits from us all.
the property they have on 111 is for sale. They want to be out of there. So I think he's looking to have that spot on Old Alfred Road as his primary location, or perhaps sole location. And I know,
Right now, we can't. Let's put it that way. Right
okay,
now, you wouldn't be able to do that. Because we do not allow that kind of activity unless it meets that minimum standard of having only 2-axle vehicles, and I think it's a maximum of 2 employees, if you look it up if you want. I mean, it's a very, very tight standard, and it's basically it's really geared towards not so much loggers as it is your traditional contractors, building contractor, plumber, electrician, carpenter, landscaping. That's really what it's geared towards.
Just to put a kind of thing in the wheel on that, I don't know if you
Mean sand?
mentioned that. But, we have a couple of people, Jesse Thurston's one, the gentleman here by the school is another one. He has a tractor trailer, he parks it in his yard. Jesse has a, I don't know how many yard dump truck, and he's just a sole owner operator. Does that fall under these contractor storage yards if they are just storing, it's more than 2 axles, but it's only one vehicle. It's not a bunch, nobody's moving, nobody's coming into it, no employees are coming. They are the sole owner, employee. Is that,
That's a hard one.
Yeah, because there are a few people like that. I'm sure that those are 2 that I can think right off, but there might be others, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, there's a guy down Limerick Road here that I've
That's
seen
the
backing in and
tractor
out, I don't know what his name is.
Yeah,
but,
I think he does have that too.
I'm
Yeah.
sure, it looks like it's typical owner-operator setup, I've seen the tractor trailer sitting outside his house
Yeah.
several
Yeah.
times.
Yeah, I don't know, this does not really address that issue, because it deals mainly with trades. And in fact, the definition deals with trades. But, that's an issue that our current ordinance is mum on, quite frankly. We don't allow truck terminals anymore in the community until we put them into the BI district 3 years ago. So people couldn't have more than one truck. I think it's a situation where, right now, we don't really have, it's not a use that's recognized. Let's put it that way. So,
I don't even
it's
know
one
if
of
you
those
call it a
liberal
home
uses, I don't know.
occupation, it really isn't.
it needs to be dealt with.
Yeah, because they're driving for other people, but they own their own rig.
Yep. Yeah, well, they're
That would be
a
their,
contract business.
that would be their vehicle to commute to and from work, as their work vehicle.
That's kind of a stretch.
And probably most people don't have an issue, it's more when you have a bunch of vehicles coming in and out.
Or you have a refill, which you're running it during the night, or you're starting up your diesel at 4 in the morning because it's 10 below out.
But is this the definition that's proposed now? I mean, that we have no
One
more
on the
than
back.
4 vehicles?
Which one? On the back?
from last page.
On page 4. Well, starting on page 3, contractor yard 1.
Yeah,
You get to 5, it says no more than 4 vehicles used by the business shall be stored in the site.
yeah.
No more than 1 vehicle classified as 25 or 30, that looks like fairly large vehicles.
Yeah,
No more than 1 vehicle that's 35 or 40,
yeah,
on and on it goes.
yep. That's why the pictures, yeah, it's,
That's a lot of vehicles. That
Yeah, it
is.
is.
Yeah.
yeah. Yes, it is.
But it does, if you go to 6, it does answer the question about the dwelling.
Yep.
Yeah, on page 6, you mean?
No, item 6 on page 4.
Yes, thank you, great, oof. I thought we had that in there.
But I didn't wanna say that one. I said, oh, this is 2012, okay.
Getting back to the original question, if that's a contract to yard one, I don't think that belongs on a 1 acre lot.
I think that was the issue that the planning board was having.
Well, no, I agree with you that on a 1 acre lot, no, but if we put
No.
a larger lot, I mean, that takes us almost back to the original discussion about animal husbandry and
Yeah.
agritourism. If you have a lot that is sufficiently large to sustain your operation and shield your neighbors from undue interference, why not?
Yeah, but remember, if you go to page 2. Wow, forgot.
Yes, minimum lot size.
Yeah, well, you can have a contractor yard in any of those districts if you have 5 acres.
R1, 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah, R1, 2, 3, and 4. And this is where I got
Is that for a contract to yard one or contract
That's
to
for
yard
2.
That's for two.
Wow.
Yeah.
I kind of think contract to yard 2 should not be in R1 or, well, certainly not R1.
Yeah, I think the planning board decided that too, but you can see how far they got, because it got numbered as if it was ready to go into the ordinance.
Yeah.
The planning board was to the point where they were ready to go with this and then pulled back. Yeah, that's where the 5 acre is, yep.
But there's no such limitation, at least that under this proposed subdivision for yard one.
Right.
Nope, no limitation on 1. Limitations on 2, and the only limitation on 2 is really the lot size.
Yeah.
And, well, it also says performance standards for existing contractor yards. So,
Oh,
where's that? On page 2 at the top, just above the chart.
right, yes, my mistake. Oh, that's right, that was part of trying to get everybody. Okay, yeah, if you go to page 4,
That's new.
yeah, this is the new one, I'm sorry. One second.
Okay.
Whew, I was going, boy, we were insane. Yeah, page 4 deals with the new one. The other one deals with existing, basically. Basically 4, on page 4, it applies only in the BI, the CCN, what we call the R, and the DB1, DB2 districts, and also shoreline overlay districts, and R4.
Yeah.
So it says you can have a contractor yard in 2 in the R4 district. And we have several in the R4 district.
Yeah.
But this would allow more contractor yards in the R4 district. So.
So what I'm not seeing, unless I'm just not seeing it, is any size, acreage limitation for new contractor yards, either 1 or 2.
Nope. There are no acreage requirements for 1. There are no acreage requirements for 2. But remember, in 2, most of them are in business zones. The only thing it's not is in the R4 district.
Okay, well, I think, I'd be inclined to say any contractor yard of any level in any residential area needs to have an acreage limitation. So that if the people in town said, okay, contractor yard 1 is okay in R1, R2, they need to be assured that it's not gonna show up on a 1 or a 2 acre lot.
Right.
I mean, even the same thing in R4. There's more acreage available, therefore it seems to me that there should be larger acreage required there because it is still, in many respects, a residential zone. It's not purely a business zone.
Right.
Say the same thing for townhouse, for the mixed-use districts too,
Yeah.
because you've got residences. So except for BI,
Well, yeah, you're gonna. You're gonna find that contractor yard two is going to be a very serious operation, and probably wants to be. Any new, let's say his son wants to come down and put in a yard, it's going to probably be in a business zone, because of the amount of area they're gonna want to use, so.
But I'd rather not have hypotheticals.
I would rather not have hypotheticals too, so if you want to limit them, even the R4 district, I mean, that's what this committee's here for. This is a very real use, this is an existing use, which they're trying to take care of existing uses, but also looking at inviting new contractor yards into the town, and the question is, where is it appropriate, where is it not? And right now, you've picked up on the fact that there is no acreage minimum required in any of the residential districts for a contractor yard one. So, when we're looking at this as uses, then we should make the distinction between one and two, and where one is appropriate, and whether increased acreage is required for it to be able to go into those residential districts. Or in some cases, as Tom said, or as some members of the planning board have said, contractor yard one even, may not be appropriate in an R1 district.
Maybe,
May not be.
depends on the acreage.
Even with the acreage, it may not be appropriate. 50, sure.
Well,
Yeah, but
And these are permitted uses, not conditional.
these would be conditional uses.
Okay.
I
Yeah,
would
The eight indicates that it was a conditional use.
Okay, yeah.
to
That makes me feel better about it because there's a review at least. And, yeah.
There's a review on any of these yards,
Yeah.
yeah. There's a review to get qualified, and there's a review to put in a new one.
Mhm.
Well, in the R1 district, one of the sentences that we have here is uses that generate significant traffic noise or similar impact will be excluded. Okay, and then later on, when we talk about the animal husbandry and the agritourism uses, subject to conditions including available acreage, impact on surrounding lots due to odor, noise, and traffic, and setback screening and buffering. It seems to me that for contractor storage yard one, those same phrases would cover it sufficiently so that you could have such an operation with your residents on site and not adversely impact the neighbors if the planning board, if the ordinance piece is properly executed.
Correct.
That makes sense?
I think there still should be an acreage requirement, Donna, like you
Well-
see putting something like that in an R1 if you've got like a minimum of 5 acres, but I'd hate
Oh, I
to see
agree.
somebody trying to squeeze 4 vehicles that conform to these specs on a 1 or 2 acre lot.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you, but that goes in the ordinance. Well, the language we have, available acreage, guides the planning board into putting that into the ordinance. See, that's another reason why, when we get past this point, we need to sit down and have a joint meeting with the planning board, so that they are very clear as to what our intent was with what we write. Something came up, I was at the last planning board meeting, and a question was raised about some of the language that we had put for, I think it was DB, I forget which, it was one of the mixed use zones. And it was, am I reading this correctly, what was the intent? So I explained what our intent was and clarified the point. But that's always going to be our responsibility, is to make the intent clear and available, so.
That was for the Gateway District. And
Thank you. Too many meetings, too many districts,
Right.
but yes. So. Any other hesitations or discussions, in which case?
Should we, along those lines, we put uses that generate significant traffic noise? Should we put uses or business, well, I live businesses, but uses, and then again, the animal husbandry, we restrict to available acreage, but should we put,
Well, what I was gonna suggest was we just expand that list. Animal husbandry, agritourism, and contractor storage yard one.
or is that going to be the only type of business that that's gonna be impacted in the R1, or should we put
Well, it,
commercial?
well, no, because our one shouldn't have commercial
Right.
uses, it's the residential zone. We're doing this because some of the residents are contractors.
I have one other use to ask to throw some more sand into the gears. That's something that we need to become more and more aware of. It doesn't really fit in the animal husbandry classification, that is riding stables. We have
Yeah,
quite a
you
few
mentioned
number of riding stables, and they are not the same thing as raising farm animals.
Right.
Totally different thing, because I shouldn't say all, but most riding stables these days have an own indoor rink. You know, whether it's they're gonna build a wood structure, they build one of the pneumatic structures, or a fabric, or even if it's outdoors. They have a tendency to hold dressage classes and eventually tournaments, and that involves traffic and people, and more than the usual traditional home occupation, because you have people coming in and out, which is not traditional for home occupations, for instance, or many of these other uses. It is a traffic generator, and the question is, we have them existing in the R1s, and we have them existing in R4s, and we have more that are on their way. The issue is that we should, I believe this committee needs to call them out as something different than animal husbandry, because they are a traffic generator, and they do, not all the time, but they have a tendency to have peak hours.
But then along those lines, agritourism, like this time of the year, you go to apple picking and how much traffic do
Yeah.
those places generate,
Yeah.
but that falls under agritourism.
Right.
So does this fall under the same
I wouldn't want to,
description?
no, I want to call it out separately, because I don't consider it agritourism, I consider it an agricultural or a animal husbandry use. It's a separate use unto itself, and it should be recognized.
Is there a more generic name? Because riding stable sounds very, very specific, as opposed to animal husbandry, agriculture, agritourism, which are very big umbrellas.
Yeah.
Isn't it an education, I mean, there's instruction going on, essentially, right?
Yeah.
Kids are going there to be
Well, you've
taught
got-
how to
you've got
ride,
three
taught how
things.
to make horses do
Well, you
strange
have,
things.
you have three things that happen. Is that how that works? You have three things happening. You have horses being boarded, like you have dogs being boarded, and they're exercised, and they're taken care of, and groomed, and all the rest of it. Then you have dressage classes, or quarter horse classes, barrel racing, or whatever. You have classes in horsemanship, and then you have events in which you get to display your horsemanship. So it's husbandry, it's education, and it's also event oriented. So it's kind of an animal unto itself. Excuse the phrase.
But then you have something like a dance school that's very similar to that. You have instruction happening, you have events,
Training.
you know.
You don't do-
But you know what I mean?
And you don't have them
You
in the
generate
residential,
traffic.
and you don't have them in the residential district.
I don't have a problem with that type of operation in a residential district. It's not like a manufacturing business where you've got machinery going and dust being created and fumes, well, fumes might be a
That's something you don't have in a dance studio.
Don't bet on it.
Well, at least it's contained.
I kind of see Tad's point in wanting to separate it out, but I wouldn't get too excited if somebody wanted to put a riding stable in an R1 district. I don't see that it's
Equestrian
particularly
facility.
Well, if you want a different term, equestrian facility could do it.
Okay.
That also could be Pineland too.
Well, so,
I know, it's incredible. That's
What's Pineland?
yeah.
Pineland's up in Greater Gloucester, and it's probably the largest indoor equestrian facility we have.
Really?
Yeah, it's
I didn't
huge.
know that.
Oh, yeah, it's immense. It's beautiful. It looks like Churchill Downs.
We
And they have a lousy alarm system.
Because I do want to point out that when we go and play Cape Elizabeth, so going up to Cape Elizabeth High School, you're driving along and it's house after house after house and boom, there's a stable. It's just the weirdest thing. I don't think there's any problem, it just looks way out of place. In the middle of,
Maybe it was our first.
I kind of think it was, it's the old, you know, it's
That's
attached to
what
kind of
happened
old
in
farm.
Key West. The same problem with Maxwell Farms, boom. That's right, you know,
That was weird, they just take a second look.
Yeah,
Yeah. And you know, so the issue is, it's not a traditional animal husbandry use, and I think it needs to be called out. Because I'm gonna have problems with it in the future, and I don't wanna see problems with it.
Wouldn't they, though, before, I don't know, have to meet, is it conditional?
We can make it conditional, yeah.
I would think it would be, because then it's gonna fall under the available acreage, control,
Setbacks.
noise, dust,
Noise, dust.
or buffering, screening.
Yeah, now if you wanna put it in that, I think that's very appropriate. Obviously, not gonna have much of a dressage ring and stable in a 1 acre lot.
Or what?
And parking for, a,
Would be
you know, a
1 acre
dressage
lot.
event is gonna be out on the
Hard.
street, and that's not good.
So if we took that next to last sentence, and said animal husbandry, equestrian facilities, and agritourism uses, in addition to contractor yard one, well, we just change it around, but uses afterward. So those 4 things, animal husbandry, equestrian facility, agritourism, and contractor yard one, should be allowed subject to conditions including available acreage, impact on surrounding lots due to odor, noise, and traffic, and setbacks, screening, and buffering. So if the situation is right and it doesn't interfere with the neighbors, go for it.
I know we've talked about that something before, but now we've said it over and over again. The term available acreage, I don't think describes exactly what we're getting at. The acreage is available, period, whether it's 1 or 5. If we want to say something, we have appropriate minimum acreage,
All right.
or something like, I think.
Well, yeah, I agree with
Yeah.
you. So what do we want to call that? Minimum acreage requirement?
And then you leave it to the planning board, we just want to say you
Yeah.
get appropriate acreage, minimum acreage requirements. They decide it's 5 acres, 10, and then we'll, you know, we'll decide whether they agree with that or not. What's that?
How about just appropriate acreage requirements?
Sure, I think we're gonna say appropriate minimum, we're gonna set, I think we wanna send a message to the planning board, you need a minimum acreage
Yeah, I agree with you.
designation, I mean, to get back to your.
The very fact that you separate that out from the minimum acreage for a residential unit calls it out as being greater than, makes that implication.
So do we want appropriate minimum acreage requirement? Yeah. We should double space this. Okay. So now we have animal husbandry, equestrian facility, agritourism, and contractor yard one uses should be allowed subject to conditions including appropriate minimum acreage requirement, impact on surrounding lots due to odor, noise, and traffic, and setback screening and buffering.
Sounds good.
The species of animals may take into consideration.
Right.
We probably need to refer back to the animal husbandry because it's kind of hanging out there by itself after all.
So if we just said,
And just copy and paste that into
in animal husbandry
residential district 2.
for animal husbandry.
Yeah, in animal husbandry, uses the species of animals should be taken into
Yeah.
consideration
Okay.
regarding those conditions.
So we're going to, so no elephants, possibly not?
If you have enough acreage, yes. So big enough trouble.
I'm good with that.
That's why they make the geeks.
You want to just like copy and paste that into,
Assuming we're all in agreement on that, yeah. That'll go. The language is pretty much the same all the way down. Same thing for R2? And the only difference between R1 and R2 basically is this minimum acreage for a residence.
Yes.
Other than that, we've said pretty much the same thing.
Yep.
Never service. Okay?
But, I mean, if we just say that, did I read that, or hear that, contractor yard two is potentially allowable, if you've got sufficient acreage.
No,
Do you want
no,
to say that or not?
no.
Okay. I think we've got to say something, we've got to
Well, we just,
use an appropriate adjective to say we're not talking about a large contractor yard here, when we use contractor.
well, we said contractor yard one.
That's not even defined yet.
Well, we're running off this.
Small
I know, but
contract.
that's not defined yet.
Good good point,
Right, it
yes.
hasn't been defined yet. Unless you want references. As previously defined by the planning board,
Which hasn't been approved either.
which hasn't been approved
Right,
yet.
so we have the cart and the horse and finish line.
It's looking good.
Yeah.
I've had some last time.
Well, basically,
Okay, so, modest contractor yards.
Is that a burqa?
Well, we can't just say small, because that's an indefinable term.
Yeah, that is. Appropriate,
Limited,
limited.
much easier before you brought that up.
You can say contractor yard limited to no more than 4 vehicles, and let the planning board take it from there.
Before time?
I think 4 is high.
We're talking about different axles. Yeah.
I
No, we
mean,
didn't.
4,
Minimal impact.
you could have, 4 trucks running in the driveway.
Oh, I'm going up with less, because I just wouldn't want to see any more. You know, if you think 2 or 3 is more appropriate, I'd be talking it.
How about Du Bois, whether he comes on there?
Yeah.
He's under the R4, so he's
Yeah.
he's not in a 1 acre zone or 2 acre zone.
How many vehicles does he have? If you lived it to 4 or 5
But I think
acres.
that's the contract.
Yeah, I agree with you.
You would want to be a two. Contractor.
He'd be in a contractor yard
Appropriately
too.
restricted.
Yeah, so he would qualify to go like in, you're talking like New Road or
Minimum
something like that.
standards.
To have 4 or 5, 4 vehicles parked in, next to the houses on New Road, I think 4 is a lot. I could see like, you say a carpenter, his truck, his equipment trailer, maybe 1 other vehicle, I think.
Well, when I said 4, I was
Yeah,
assuming that we
we're
would
going-
insist on something like about 5 acres
5
to
acres,
approve
yeah.
this in the first place,
That's
so
true.
that you wouldn't have, 4
That's true.
trucks
That's
squeezed
true.
into your driveway. But I agree with you, Simone, I think 4 may be high, I think
Yeah.
maybe,
I'm just
I think
thinking,
it
I'm
depends-
just thinking of the
Depends
grand,
on the operation though, and the
Right.
size of the acreage.
yeah.
No, you-
Right.
If you put 4 trucks on 5 acres,
that's not bad.
that's not bad.
But I'm just thinking of the, some of these contractors that, I guess they wouldn't be able to though, if they were in a small neighborhood like the New Road and they start having like a couple of vehicles.
And remember, we're talking about new ones here.
Right.
So if the planning board says 5 acre minimum, and you have 4.5 acres, you just can't do it. It won't be approved.
You might want to say it's, the problem is you don't want to get too specific at this point, but at the same time, you want to say something that a contractor yard that's of acreage that is appropriate in scale with the neighborhood. And if the yard is, the activity is in scale with the
Well, that
neighborhood.
would
Suitably
really
confusing
apply all
and vague.
4 of these things.
Yeah.
However, Tom had a suggestion for, instead of contractor yard 1,
I just, my only issue,
Oh, no, I was responding to
oh, okay.
a call on my phone.
Oh. Maybe it's
Sorry.
just restricted, a restricted contract.
Restricted yard?
So it knows, we're kind of sending a message, we're not, it's something different from all other races.
Yeah.
And that's it, would leave it like
I
that,
like
you went from
restricted, that works for
restricted,
me.
including,
Again, we're just, this
Just
is,
a bulk
this is just,
voiding, yeah,
this is the, you know, the vision, you know, the nuts and bolts we leave to the smarter folks at the room.
So,
And if we meet with them, as Donna suggested, I think we can kind of
You want an acreage, you want
then
vehicles.
express what we discussed.
right, what's the intent? You know, actually, maybe that's something we should consider doing, not as part of the document, but as part of the presentation. Before we meet with them, we put together a little intent paragraph
That's not a bad idea.
so that we don't have to physically be there and explain it.
My memory's not always that great.
Sometimes no. Let me read this one more time and see if we can improve it. Animal husbandry, equestrian facilities, agritourism, and restricted contractor yard usage should be allowed subject to conditions including appropriate minimum acreage requirements, impact on surrounding lots due to odor, noise, and traffic, and setback screening and buffering. For animal husbandry, the species of animals will be taken into consideration regarding those conditions.
With that wording, do we really need a contractor yard 1 and a contractor yard 2?
Well, we don't, and we can't, because we're writing this before. This is imaginary right now.
Okay.
So we kind of can't. So. But if we write an intent paragraph, we can say, by the way, by restricted contractor yard, we mean contractor yard 1.
And that certainly would be something that would be appropriate for this board to pass on to the planning board, give them direction that way.
Yeah.
I think that would be, the planning board, if it was an advisory level, that, and it's something that we should discuss when we have a joint meeting. Because these are sticky issues for the planning board too, and they've been operating kind of in a vacuum, so.
Yeah.
Where do they envision contractor yards 2?
They really kind of envisioned them being in the business zones and the R4 district, that's it. That's where they
So
were really
we
looking.
should express that here, that less restrictive contractor storage yards would be permitted in B1. I don't know, maybe not R4, I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, in terms of our intent statement,
Mhm.
Oh, yeah, in terms of the
Okay.
intent statement, yeah, absolutely. If you decide to go with R4.
well, we'll go there when we go there.
We'll drive off that bridge when we get.
Okay, same language for R2?
Sure.
All right. Now, R3. All right, what was formerly known as R3, rural residential. One of the discussions that we had a while back was whether this was a necessary district at all. And a partner discussion to that is perhaps it is a necessary district, but it shouldn't be where it is.
Where's R3?
So,
R3 is basically, pull it up.
I mean, fundamentally, the only difference between this and R2, because the minimum residential acreage is still 2 acres, is the encouragement of conservation subdivisions where the developable land, 50% or more, is set aside as permanent open space. And there's also some restrictions regarding not putting new lots on arterial and collector streets. So the idea is to hide everything in the back.
R3 district, just, I'm sorry.
No, that's
No,
not.
go ahead.
R3 district, because the question was asked to me, basically is located in Proctor Road and extends down along Old Post Road between the railroad tracks and the BI district, down to really the Old Post and campground intersection. And then it basically starts following, in the Lombard Road area, it's all in the Lombard Road area between Lombard and Log Cabin. And then it just basically follows the Goss Mill Brook. It's to the east of Goss Mill Brook, the entire rest of the way down to where Goss Mill comes out into the
Kennebunk River. So all of, let's say, the area from what would be the Charlie Museum down to the Kennebunk borders, that's all R3. Now, the R3 is a 2-acre zone, which has different uses than the R2.
But not many different uses.
Right,
Not
can
many.
you name them again, where do they have them?
That's
Or there are two
Yeah.
total.
I think one of them was a mineral extraction. Was that
Yeah,
one?
Is that in
no,
right?
no, well, yes, okay.
That was in
R3, campground, golf course, mineral extraction, sawmill, no, sorry, take that back, that was R4. Animal husbandry, more than, that was the big one. Animal husbandry, more than 5 animal units. And then, that was it.
Mineral extraction too.
No, not unless my original list is wrong.
So that's R3 compared to R2?
Does.
R2 not have,
Animal, R2 can have, originally, I think maybe just changed this, but R1, R2, you can have animal husbandry, but less than 5 animal units. And R3, you could have 5 or more.
Golf course condition.
Yeah, golf courses only.
Okay, I already take that back, I'm reading my own list wrong. So much for having the mind work. Animal husbandry, yes, more than 5 animal units, but that's also in R4 is permitted, that was why that was different. And then in addition to that, campground, golf course, mineral extraction, sawmill, and solid waste facility, agronomic utilization. Basically composting. Thank you.
Compost spreading, right? It's
Uh,
compost spreading, because
no,
And
no, it's solid waste facility, you can produce it, not just spreading it.
well, solid, it's not an agronomic, unless it's all built, it's all created on site. Correct?
Too far back for me to remember and be
Okay.
accurate, I'm not even gonna guess.
Okay.
That's one of those things I think I might know. Okay, let's go back to. Okay. All right, yes, that was, so we have some expanded use in R3.
Not much.
No,
you're waiting for the golf course.
well, that's,
Well, we have
there already is one.
You don't have to read.
Yeah.
It's mostly on food.
That's, it's technically a Rundle is an R3.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, no, you're right, no, the driving range is actually in the fourth.
Right.
Yeah, the driving range is in the
And that's not the golf course, that's just,
Yeah.
No,
golf course
it's
is
considered to be
neat,
part of
it all.
Right.
fourth. It's considered to be part of the golf course, it's successful too.
But it's, yeah.
All right, well, let's, why is mineral extraction allowed in R3? Are there minerals to extract?
Not anymore,
Okay,
they're pretty much gone.
so.
There's a couple of hummocks of Adams soil, which is gravel, and they've already attacked a couple of them. So, yeah, that's right, we have soil maps now.
Yippee!
Yeah,
Lousy ones, but
that was real Crayolas.
with real Crayolas, not expensive. Yeah, okay, so this is the R3 district right in here. And we got Krogan's, that's junk. There's a little pocket of Adams. They're the A's, in case you're wondering.
I can barely see the
There-
red.
There's not a lot. No, the red is all wetlands.
So is that even an issue?
Mineral extraction, yeah, we've got, I've got a pocket here, and that's actually an No, I don't think it's an issue. You got a couple pockets, one of them's already, that pond was already excavated, all that gravel was taken out. And, even across the street, they're tapped out too. They don't have, according to this map, they don't have a lot in here. They're just where they have some, if they've taken some out. There's not a lot of resources in this area. So I would say mineral extraction, in terms of gravel, no, there's nothing here. There's no ledge. There's no granite blast, which I guess is a blessing. But that's according to this. This map is a medium intensity soil survey. Parts. But it does give us an indication there's not a lot of soil out there. So mineral extraction really is important.
So can we just remove mineral extraction out of that then?
Can we just remove R3?
Where I was going with this
Yeah.
was if we took the tack of recommending that we blend R3 just into R2, all
Are there
that,
any areas of R3 that we feel should go into R4?
well, that might be the next step, but if we look at this as blending it mostly, I'll use the word mostly, into R2, what that might mean is that we have to add to our previous list of things that you can do with R2, campground, golf course, sawmill and solid waste facility, agronomic utilization, assuming you had sufficient acreage on which to do it. You know, if there's some logical places to put in R4, then that's not an issue, because those are already allowed in R4.
But a campground's not allowed in R2.
But it could be.
Right.
And I would ask you, do you really want to put a campground in
Have sufficient acreage?
Yeah, why not?
R2? Yeah.
Are we putting a campground in R2, or are we putting R2 over a campground?
Well, right now, we don't allow campgrounds in R1 and R2.
Right.
And if you turn it into an R2, then that's the issue, isn't it?
Can we
Because
go-
that means that you could put R2, campgrounds in all R2s.
Can we go back to the other map
Sure.
to show the variances?
Okay. So we've got, this is our R3, which is a strip. And here's our R2s.
I mean, if you kept the R2, like on the old post road, this side of the railroad tracks, it's all small lots over there anyways, which are already pretty much
This area,
built up already, yeah. All that is,
this is all terrible land. This is all.
right, it's all swamp though.
So what if the northern parts of R3 became R2?
This area, you mean?
Yeah, that area plus the one on the corner there.
So when you cross the railroad tracks, then it goes back, you preserve R3 in the Lombard Road area, and this is that triangle between the Lombard Road here, Senate Road here, and this is Log Cabin.
Why, but not, why not just take away our, like, I'm sorry.
R3?
Yeah.
I don't know, I've been trying to figure out, I think Donna hit on it when she said, I mean, the issues are campgrounds, and the other issue is gonna be, animal husbandry, and those are the big ones.
Are there any campgrounds in R3?
No, they're in R4.
So
Right now-
without affecting anybody, then if you blend R3 into R2, there's nobody there that's actually being affected as far as the campground issue goes.
Is there any lot that could be used for that purpose in R2, either there or where it exists?
Do you have John's maps available?
Yeah.
All right, because that's what I've got in front of me here, and that helps. Because you can actually look at lot sizes.
Let me get back to it, if I can remember how to get back to it.
'Cause, well, while you search, right now, that upper corner of R3 has looks like 4 10 to 19 acre lots, 2, 3, 20 to 29 acre lots, and one really strangely shaped 30 to 39 acre lot. And one 50-acre lot, and then it looks like that doesn't look like it's connected to the next, it's half in R3, half in R4, or part in R3, or part in R4. So we can, that's a split lot situation, so that's not a big deal. And then when you get down to that little strip between the railroad tracks and Old Post Road, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If you cut off the campground road, 10 to 19 acre lots, 4 of which, all 5 of the 6 are partly in BI. And then there's 1 20 to 29 acre lot, which is also partly in BI. So adding that down into the R2 section, there we go, that's what I'm looking at.
Which we're looking at right here.
Yeah, so,
So everything in the lighter green is already smaller than 10
Right.
acres.
Oh, yeah. So we don't have a lot.
You don't have a lot, you've got a few.
and even the ones that are there, there's nothing that really exceeds 30 acres. And again, a good number of those lots are split lots.
Mhm.
What, the ones up here?
Yeah,
Yeah, so you've got some on the BI that cross
Yeah.
over BI, and that, and then the other ones are R4 and R3,
Right.
which is that, probably you, Dorothy, right? That bigger lot down there is split, or pretty close to it.
Up this one?
You know, the other one going R3, R4. By the railroad tracks, right about it, that one.
And,
Well, very honestly, the problem with the railroad tracks is anything on the east side of the railroad tracks is pretty much
This, yeah, you're the only one that has
isolated
right away,
land.
I think.
It's, you can't get to it.
Yeah.
It's-
But not really for residential.
No.
No.
You can't have homes
No.
there.
No, you can
Cross over.
You can
Mhm.
cross over and do various resources there.
so it would make sense to put that in R4.
This? Oh, yeah.
That's that particular, well, no, the split lot that's,
The yellow.
yeah,
This one?
yeah, that would make sense to go into R4, and the other ones would make sense for either, you know, to go in either direction, depending upon the landowner preference.
Well, you know,
Well,
I always look at these lots with the railroad tracks, splitting them as 2 lots. quite
okay,
frankly.
all right, well,
I
then
put
it
the
doesn't
two,
make a
because
difference,
the
right?
front part is usable, this is usable,
Okay,
assuming that the site constraints aren't excessive. This part, unless you've got a right of way across it, it's not
Or
usable.
access from Kevon Court.
Or access for, well, this ends. This access right here, this, I believe isn't that part of the, no, that, I think that's, isn't that the line, isn't that Granite Road? It's a railroad line that I think the trolley uses. Yeah, sure.
I know that this came on the trucks.
Yeah.
A lot back.
And so the other log cabin road area, you do have a couple of big lots, 40 acres.
yeah, it seems to me that that might make sense to plug that into R4, that lower section. R3 South.
Make this all R4?
I don't know if I'd put all of it R4, I think I'd break that up into,
Yeah, but it's surrounded by R4.
and then that's gonna be your townhouse corner district anyways, right?
Well, that only goes up here, that only goes up to about here.
Right there.
Yeah, right now.
See,
Yeah.
It-
I really do want to make sure we're open.
Yeah, me too, I think all of log cabin road is eventually
I
gonna get
agree.
commercialized. It's another gateway
To agree.
for tourists.
Pull the pin on that hand grenade. I'm having a problem just getting up here before I go any further. I'd be concerned to do it R4 because remember, this is all 2 acre zoning, you're gonna up it up to 3. You make this R4, it's 3 acre zoning.
Yeah,
So we're gonna be taking rights away.
correct.
Right.
I'd be a little worried about that. If you're gonna do it, then you make it R2. R3 does, I mean, if you wanna put a campground down in here, or here, or what other uses do we have that's largely golf course? Sawmill. You could do a sawmill. Some of that one is pretty, this is pretty rugged stuff, it's back here that way. It's a long, this is along the Boston Brook. So there's a floodplain in here. But, yeah, we do have 50 acres, almost 50 acres, and we have several 20 to 29s. Is this, here, I think, is that Pitchfork's land right in here? Anybody know? I think it is. John's got his apartments here, and then he's got the cell tower in the back. I'm not sure, I can't. Anyway.
I'd say put it all into R2 and see if anybody screams.
Well,
What it was, not losing anything.
Well,
They're not,
No.
No, you're
What
not
I-
losing anything unless it's a campground. Unless you have aspirations to put in a campground, that's about the only thing you know is.
so why go R2 instead of R3? Why are we doing anyway? Why not go the other way? Put it all R.
Well, because then you'd open up all of the R2 to campground, what was the other item, Donna?
What was it?
campground, golf course, mineral extraction, sawmill, and solid waste facility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But all of them are limited uses.
I don't see what you're really gaining, Doc, by doing that rather than putting the R3
Because you're restricting.
in
You
there.
are taking away, right? I mean, that's what you're going up instead of down. You're restricting instead of.
Yeah, if you do it all R2, you're gonna be restricting them more.
That's right, that's a
Some
that's a
don't.
large group of individuals, whereas we were, portioned just our last go around. People don't like losing, or even the thought of losing, right, you know? And if they have to meet all the credentials of conditional, you know, I'd like to see somebody, you know, that you really can't. A lot of those uses that you say you can't, but you're limiting it is, somebody is potential.
Well, maybe let's look at this from the other direction. What, hypothetically, what if we said that R3 is gonna blend into R2, which makes R2 much bigger? But then anywhere in R2, you can do the campground, golf course, mineral extraction, sawmill. I think the solid waste facility ought to just be an R4 thing personally, but anyway, but we expand that to all of R2. Yeah? So what's that going to do? And, you know, what's the likelihood any of those things are going to happen in what is already R2? Because a good deal of R2 is already quite jammed. There are some large parcels, but again, if you're on 50 acres, right, that meets the conditions, is that a problem?
I don't know what it is.
One thing about it, it's not, the solid waste facility is only for agronomic utilization,
Right.
which is basically land spreading. Basically increasing the nutrient content of the soil at a rate commensurate with the nutritional needs of the crop to be grown and assimilative capacity of the soil. Otherwise improve agricultural soil conditions or provide some other horticultural benefit.
Okay, so it is just spreading, it's not.
It's just basically spreading, yeah.
Okay.
But it's not permitted.
Spreading is
Conditional.
allowed, but the creation of a disposal facility is.
Right.
It's allowed as a conditional use. So it makes the
Just that,
assumption.
yeah, just that.
Yeah,
Right.
just that.
Yeah.
So it makes the assumption that there's agricultural uses that will use agronomic utilization, that will want to do land
sprayed, so it makes the assumption there's agriculture there.
And since agriculture is allowed,
Right.
that's not an issue.
Right. Well, until you spread it. And the neighbors.
I'm gonna say it's
What's the dark green?
The dark green's, that's actually the zone. This right here?
Yeah. I think R4 in general.
Yeah, that's a good question, what is the dark
What
green?
is-
This is all R4. I'm not sure what the.
That's what I'm wondering, what is that?
Well, R4 is not color coded, except for the lots that cross
The lots
lines.
that cross the boundaries.
Right, they're just R4 lots, no particular size.
Okay,
That's why, but there are 4 lots.
okay. There's a little confusing.
I got it, just for a second. so. Yeah, so the question really is, you could do agronomic utilization anywhere we allow agriculture. Commercial agriculture, which is what. I know that Noah uses it, you know, but he does it on such a limited scale. He's not doing major land spread. Actually, he's using green more than anything else.
Would it pay to just bring up the map of R2 to make sure that there's nothing there that we're gonna impact if the decision is made to lump R2 into R3 or R3 into R2?
Well, that's our one. 2. Okay. Okay, there it is, that's one. R2 north or south?
Um,
Do R2 north. This is basically the mountain road area, bounded between the R1 district and the Eastern Trail with Bass Lane crossing the line, crossing the trail through there. And actually Hidden Meadows crosses too, but it's not part of this district. It's right here, it's a little swath in here. Yeah, here's the R2 district,
And there's a lot of large lots there.
a lot of large lots. But I will tell you this, it's a lot of large lots of extremely difficult land.
You've got the whole quarry that's
Yeah.
over
Yeah.
how many acres, and you
Don't
can't,
know.
doesn't have any access to it. Well, there's the quarry that has access, but then you have, Mrs., sorry, her name, she has like, no access to her properties on landlocked.
These are all landlocked, look at them all. These are
So
all
those would be very difficult places for someone to put a campground, a golf course, a sawmill, or take advantage of spreading stuff on their soil.
This
If
area,
anybody did find a way to do it, it probably isn't gonna affect any
Anybody.
residents
Right.
right there, so.
What about mineral extraction in that
oh
area?
yeah, well, this is heavy mineral.
Well, yeah, that's why I brought that up, so. But right now, mineral extraction is not allowed in R2.
So they have to get a special,
They can't do
they
it.
can't do it.
No.
So if you want to
If you wanted to
reactivate
pour
the
it.
quarry, you could not reactivate the quarry.
So it kind of sounds like Dot's suggestion makes the most sense, would be to make R2 R3, because then all these things would be allowed in this area where it's not going to affect anybody anyway.
Right.
Then that's one R2.
Yeah,
So it's-
But remember also, this is all farmland down through here,
Mhm.
okay? Don't forget that this is the Olivers and Mark Panett. This land all in here is active farming. And we have others along through here that could be if they wanted, but now there's.
But we've already covered that between agricultural, animal husbandry, and equestrian facilities.
So we're good.
All right, here's the south.
Acclimate.
Going to myself.
Route 1 is right up the
This is
center.
River Road right through here,
Okay.
okay? Here's Old Post Road coming out through. Here's Old Post Road, so
Yeah,
there's
Old Post.
Lombard. There's Lombard right through here. And this is Civic right here. So, and we have, this boundary has changed.
basically through here, we're having smaller lots. A lot of these lots, this is a smaller district now, or it's proposed to be. We need to try to juxtapose this against the, well, now, there we go. See how it's a smaller
Yeah,
district?
it's got that chunk cut right
It's
out.
got that chunk cut right out.
So that DB2 area would probably encompass most of the larger lots that are presently in the R2, right, Ted?
Well, it cuts some of them in half.
Yeah, so it's gonna basically leave a bunch of smaller lots in that R2.
Yeah.
Right.
So tacking R3 onto that to make a larger R2 makes sense in a variety of ways.
Or attach R2 to R3.
Well, I said, this is a 2-acre zone, I mean, so it's easier to
Right.
Yeah.
just permit what those uses in the arch.
Expand the uses into R2, right. If we tell the planning board that we now have R1 and R3, they will kill us.
Come on,
Yes, they will.
simplify, it freed up some of their book that was kind of freed up.
Well, no,
Okay.
they get upset just because we're changing the names.
Oh.
If we skip a number, they'll go ballistic.
I think the other difference between the two districts is that R2 North has got a lot of smaller lots in it, especially on the other side of the turnpike. You got Bartlett Farms 2 there. You got Stones Road, South Stones Road. You got Laura Lane. So you've got two different.
No, don't go there.
I'm thinking about, why not? Why not take R1 right to the turnpike?
Where is this?
Well, R2 is, R2 has no natural access point, if you look at it. This is the turnpike, this is a real barrier.
Right.
That's a barrier. Instead of that, ooh, that's kind of cool. That's a barrier. And this is kind of like, the only access to it is Skillins Road and Old Alfred Road. Those are the only two real accesses. This area in here is just not accessible.
What about Limerick Road?
Limerick Road, we can get it through Limerick Road here, but I'm just talking about like these two parcels here. This is Laurel Lane, I know that, and there.
So are you suggesting that what's northwest of the turnpike for R2 going to R1?
I'm just wondering, you've got Bartlett Farms here, that's all taken up, that's gone.
We could expand our one there and cut it down on the end where West Lane and all that is, Burt Cowgill, all those big parcels.
Yeah, that's a whole different
Yeah,
small relax
I
there,
know.
but yes, that's another thing that needs to be addressed.
Yeah. If you brought it to the turnpike, then you're connecting both ends of R1 together,
Yeah.
theoretically.
Theoretically, you would.
Yeah, that kind of almost makes sense. I was thinking wrong with that.
Yeah, you can't do that.
But,
Can't.
oh,
All right,
See, we're getting far afield, aren't we?
are we in general agreement that we should do away with R3 as it currently exists and make what is currently R3, R2, but bring the additional conditional uses from R3 into R2? So that R2's list would now read animal husbandry, equestrian facility, yada, 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 and campgrounds, golf course, mineral extraction, sawmill, solid waste facility, agronomic utilization. So we're giving those landowners with larger tracts of land more things they could potentially do, conditions permitting. Still 2 acres. Now, what we're losing is if you want to think of that as losing, what we're losing is the language, let's get back to my page here.
Well, we're losing campgrounds.
Well, no, not necessarily.
I wouldn't put campgrounds in R2.
Have.
What?
Why? I'll tell you honestly, because I think it's too dense a development in some cases there, and they've already had a big fight over campgrounds before in R2.
Wait, they have. But that,
Yeah.
it's when
R2, campgrounds used to be allowed in R2, and it was excluded. That happened in 2006, I think, 2007. Relatively recent
But
history.
why?
Wait,
I don't know, I
Okay.
wasn't here.
I was, I don't remember
I
that.
don't know.
It might have been snuck early.
Which
That's been known to happen.
Do you know which lot around where it was?
Where was the R2? R2 can't used to have campgrounds, and I went back.
I mean, it wasn't a particular campground that was trying to amend it, you know?
Might have. Maybe Bethel was expanding, I don't know. But it had to be Bentley, actually, from the thing. Because how else did he have his camper? No, it wasn't.
It could have been, that's the only campground I can think of.
Because Hemlock was well established.
Oh, yeah, well said.
And Red Apple is that.
Been there forever, yeah.
Right.
Okay, but I think we did figure that if we were to put R3 into R2, there were only a couple of 3 lots which were down in the southern part of the existing R3 that were big enough to do a campground anyway. So, I mean, if we were to take campground out and make it not allowed in the R2, I think the only people you might hear from are whoever owns those 2 or 3 lots down off Log Cabin Road.
Oh, that's a good point. However, to play devil's advocate there, because the possibilities for campgrounds are so limited, if we left it in, odds are we're never gonna have one anyway.
that's my, I really feel, I'm with Honor on it. I really, really.
So, depends upon,
Anybody's.
you know, which landowner we wanna range for which reason. But, you know, when we have our public workshops,
Well,
Yeah,
well,
we've
now-
been surprised before, thinking we were giving landowners all this opportunity, and they turned around and said, we don't want your opportunity, we want our residential houses.
in which case, this will be a very easy thing to take out. I guess I'd almost rather test the waters and see if there's support or opposition. If there's no opposition, it's not gonna hurt anybody to have it in, and if there is opposition, we,
If Bentley's was the problem child last time around, where do they fall now? Are they running
Right.
into the present R3?
No, they're in the DB2.
They're in GB2?
so that's a moot point for Bentley.
It is a move point for Bentley's,
Okay.
but it's also the issue of future campgrounds. You know, one of the things I think you want to do with campgrounds, I mean, I wouldn't want them in R2, very frankly, because I don't want a campground on Mountain Road. Mountain Road is a disaster. Cannot take the traffic, which is why the seasonal cottage can't go through there. It makes sense that they should, because that's a great connection, but I'd be real concerned about further development, intensive development in the R2 district, at least in the Mountain Road area, so that the liability to the town.
Well, isn't that where the planning board comes in with the ordinance with regards to the restrictions of traffic, noise?
No, it's more than that. We're gonna have to get more serious about it than just restrictions, because you're gonna say, no, you can't, so why put it in? If you're gonna say, no, the road can't handle that kind of intensity, then why put it in as a use in the zone? I guess is what I'm saying.
Well, I guess because that's not the only road in the zone.
True.
Because there was a chunk down there, down below, like, down in the R3 near on the Log Cabin Road, that you could have put a couple of
Yeah,
parcels that would have maybe to a campground.
yeah, I would say you wanna be on an arterial, I mean, the point would be, may say, you gotta be on an arterial, but that would put it on, let's say, Old Post. Old Post is an arterial. It's defined as an arterial. The arterials are Log Cabin, Old Post, Campground, Limerick. Yeah. We can change that, but currently it is an arterial. Mainly because of the trip generation of it. It's, and so is, River Road. It's based on the number of trips. It's not based necessarily on design, but based on trips. That's what we got right now. There's some other ones that are on there.
So when you say whole post, can you explain that?
The old posters in arterial, I would say if you're gonna do a use like that, like, if you were gonna do mineral extraction or campgrounds that do have, traffic like that, you'd say, okay, if you're gonna do it in the R two, it's gotta be in an arterial. And if you look at what we have for arterials, good lord, what isn't an arterial?
I know, I'm gonna say,
Wow.
Brimstone.
They're all
They're- yeah.
arterial. Brimstone's an arterial.
I know, it shouldn't be.
Irving, Old Post, here's our arterials in town. Brimstone, Irving, Old Post, Thompson, Campground, Limerick, River, US Route 1, okay, that makes sense. Curtis Road, west of Irving Road. Curtis Road, really? Were those hairpin
The only thing
turns?
arterial about Curtis Road is it raises your blood pressure.
Right. Log Cabin Road, yes. Senate Road, okay. Mountain Road, definitely no, should not be. Irving Road, no, that's Curtis Road west of that. State Route 111, yes. Downing Road, down here. New Road, and State Route 35.
The 5 inches of it.
Oh,
That's my street.
did we invade Kennebunk at one point? I didn't know
The
about?
outpost, we're protecting that in the town.
That's good. Thank you for your service on that. Yeah, those are arterials. Well, that I guess not gonna work.
Either that or we redefine what are arterial collectors, you know.
Well, as I said, they are based on ADTs. They are based on how much traffic goes on it, and which tells you, we have some work to do at the planning board level in terms of determining and trying to come up with a way of getting some offset impact monies to fit some of these roads that really can't take.
Yeah.
There is a carrying capacity to some of these roads. We haven't done a real good job of determining what that is. So redefining this might have to be something that has to be done.
How about we do this? We're hung up on one word right now. We have general agreement that R3 should become more of R2. And that we should expand at least some of the uses of R2 to include those currently as conditional in R3. The other thing in R3 that will go away unless we do something with it is all subdivisions of 5 or more lots are required to be conservation subdivisions in which 50% or more of the developable land is set aside as permanent open space, and new lots fronting on Arterial and Collector Street, which is apparently everything but a driveway, will be limited, and if allowed, oversized lot frontage will be required. Because those are really the two things that distinguish R3 from R2 right there. And which is why it was called rural residential, because the goal when they designed this was to preserve the open space,
Right.
kind of make it 2-acre lots, but it's going to look like R4, I guess.
How's that working?
As well as the rest of it. So,
It's a good concept, but it's not working.
I don't know that that's a big loss, I just wanted to make sure we discussed it and made an informed
So
decision.
those would be lost, what you just read.
It would be very difficult to apply that to all of R2.
Yeah.
What's the big problem if we just leave it at 3? What's driving us to combine this into one? Is it just to try to simplify the ordinance?
It seems that way.
Well, plus there was some discussion about, did R3 make any sense? It's kind of carved out.
Oh, yeah.
There doesn't seem to be any rhyme, reason, rationale, it's just there. So, and since those particular demands, as Tad just alluded to, don't seem to have done anything, I think, sort of, even though we started this in response to the planning board asking us to do something about those mixed-use districts, I think we're also looking at a comprehensive plan that's been in effect for a couple of decades and really hasn't done its job. So maybe it's time to serve the landowners a little better and have a different vision for the town than what happened at that point. So,
I, for one, can tell you that it did help me on my neighbors, that leaving, kind of condensing the buildings. And this is the historic development right next door, which is rentals, and I quite frankly still think they're a little bit out of character for what was around there. And what they did is they condensed them and had to leave a lot of open land out back, and I think that's wonderful for wildlife and,
So why is it that language cannot be
put into,
put into the R2?
It's,
If people think it's
right.
it's
something,
required in all districts. Right now, we have a standard.
you mean the subdivisions?
This right here.
The cluster subdivision
Cluster
is
subdivision.
required for any project involving 4 or more lots. It's required. It's not an option. And the planning board, we attacked this last year and went over it. We even had Randall Orend weigh in, who's one of the gurus of this stuff, and he and I were talking for a long time about it. He was willing to come to talk to the planning board, and they said, no, we've decided we're gonna keep it. We're not gonna change it. And I'm going to allow large lot subdivisions, which could be a market problem, for us. But we require right now all subdivisions to be clustered.
So, then that's a moot point.
It is a good point, I think.
Then what about the other one regarding the new lots fronting on arterial and collector streets, limited and if allowed, oversized lot frontage will be required?
I don't think that's terribly important.
Well, there's this assumption that 50 feet more of the lot frontage a rural district makes. And
Doesn't work in our form.
I haven't seen it work anywhere. That's not how you preserve rural character, is by having bigger lot frontages. It's by how you label buildings out for the landscape. That's how you do it. You certainly got to do it on a lot by lot basis.
Even though the ordinance now requires clusters,
Subdivisions.
subdivisions, don't we need a statement to that effect in the comp plan? To support that ordinance provision?
I believe it was.
Well, I'm saying, we don't have it now.
We don't have it
We
in
would
these
have it now
descriptions,
as-
but I think we have it in, I'll go back, but I think it's in our list that we have, our action list.
Right, because right now, that's what it says.
Right.
Right, but if we eliminate 3, as Donna says,
But it only
this
says
language
it
go.
for 3. It doesn't say it for anybody
That's
else.
what I'm saying.
Right.
So we should probably, if we're gonna still have that as something we want enforceable in our ordinance, I think we gotta state it someplace, even if it's just an R2, the new R2, the combined R2, whatever. I think we ought to have a statement that that's still something that we envision the town utilizing.
Well, shouldn't it apply to all residential area? You know, shouldn't that apply
You
to
put it in
R1, 2,
R1,
3, and 4?
You know, it does in R1, the question is, should it? Because R1 is already 1 acre zone.
Right.
And quite frankly, given our soils here, until we get soil, I don't know how much more you can go to, half an acre and put septic and well on, can't do it. You can with community systems, but, community septic system generally, but. Not sure.
But if this is a subdivision, doesn't that imply, what? It obviously implies more than one dwelling, so you're looking at more than 1 acre. So let's say you had a 10-acre lot. This means that you couldn't put more than 5 dwellings on it, because you've got to put 50% aside, and those dwellings need to be clustered.
Well, what you do is you first start off on what your net residential density is. I've got 10 acres, I take out all my wetlands, I take out all.
All right, let's assume we had 10 perfect acres, just for the sake of argument.
In Rundle?
Well, we borrowed them from another community.
Okay. We went over to Limerick and borrowed some of Carol's land out there. Yeah. Okay, so if we had 10 acres, we're still gonna have to take residential out we're gonna subtract out the road area.
Okay.
Okay? And then you're gonna put 50% aside. What you're gonna do is say, okay, let's say I've got 10 acres after net residential density for math purposes. And you're in a 1 acre zone, so I can have 10 lots.
but I gotta put 50% aside in open space, so I'm gonna reduce them down to half-acre lots. So I'm gonna have 10 half-acre lots, so I'm gonna have, 5 acres of developed land and 5 acres of open space, that's how it works. And you work with the planning board on where that 5 acres of development is, and because nobody wants to build that much road, it's always in the front, and the back is always the area that's preserved. When, if you really want to preserve rural character, you push them in the back and have the open space up front, along the road, that's the way you really do it.
Well, not gonna answer that discussion.
But, yeah, that's a design issue, the planning board's gotta do something with, that, when they run things.
We don't say cluster conservation subdivisions like we do in R3, but we do say higher density as possible, up to, 2 units per acre, or up to 1, for residential subdivisions that preserve open space or participate in transfer development rights and conform to established design guidelines. So does that's not quite saying a conservation subdivision, but.
Doesn't make it a requirement,
Doesn't make it a requirement.
it's an encouraging.
Yeah.
Right. The planning board can exceed what the comp plan says. They say, oh, well, we can do that, and we will. We'll require it in every district, which is what they do right now. Including, even in the business district, if you do subdivision in business districts, you have to do. There's no wiggle.
So, if I'm understanding this correctly, that particular language is not an impediment to us doing away with R3 and just putting everybody into R2.
No, I don't see that language as being impediment. The language, the only question was if the intent in the existing R3 district is to move residential development away from the arterial so you don't see them, the planning board needs, and you want to continue that, you want to keep that rural looking in that area, then the planning board's got to come up with a better system. It's kicked over to the planning board to come up with a better design system to make sure that you don't see houses along that road in conformance with what the current RR district calls for. So that's an execution issue.
I'm guessing it's too late for that, though.
No.
There are no
Yeah.
houses visible on that road, or on those roads?
Well, I always judge whether a place is rural by whether I can release a trapped squirrel somewhere without putting it in somebody's basement. If I can find an empty lot, I can dump it on. That's the way I judge rural. And yeah, I have a problem going on Old Post Road and being able to release a squirrel. Jimmy Jones property, that's where I'll do it.
So,
It's a question, I mean, do you want to keep, I mean, you can actually apply that to all R2. The same standard of the R2, and they make the planning board work. And say, okay, guys, let's come up with a system of preserving rural character. But I mean, then we're getting into that issue, that issue that is always talked about in town, and it's sort of like the third rail. Everybody wants it, but then when it gets down to executing, it's another story.
well, yes, and
We want to preserve our rural character,
Didn't
okay,
we-
how do we do that? Okay, well.
Well, we had homework that we never fulfilled, and one of them is rural to you might mean something different rural to me.
Exactly.
And, right? I mean,
Yeah.
this is like a moot, we're just kind of
it's a
going on
tough
and.
question.
It's a tough question.
So let's go back to the easy one,
Okay.
which is, are we seeing any rational reason that we can defend to keep R3 as it is now? Or does it make sense to blend it into R2 and put it under the same sets of rules and restrictions and conditional uses for everybody there? Let's go around the room. John, what are your thoughts? Keep it or blend it?
No, I'd say blended. I just don't see that there's that much difference between the two areas. I think the only significant thing I'm looking at is there were a couple of 3 lots in the R3 South area that might be big enough to do something like a campground with. But my personal feeling is blend it in with the R2 and see if anybody yells. If they don't,
Simone?
I'm fine with it. I don't think it's ever, R3's kind of, they'll have always just been floating up there and never really, you know.
John?
I just feel we should blend it. That's my.
I don't know that all of it should be blended into R2 though. I think there's some sections that should be considered for R4.
Okay.
As long as, my understanding is, for ease of just looking at it and working in the books, we're not taking away any, the only thing we're doing is allowing a couple more uses, conditional uses, than what they previously had. If I'm understanding that right. And I'm 100% comfortable with blending it.
I'm fine with that. I mean, you know, I'm looking at this ordinance, and if I was going to it as somebody who wanted to see what he can do on R3, and I'd be running down and going, why does this community have these 2 districts?
Right.
I mean, it's borders on silly. Now, I understand you can argue about maybe some of these uses, as Tad is suggesting, but maybe we can work through those things, and maybe what we ought to find out, Dot, is from these folks is, does anybody really care whether we take campgrounds out or not?
Yeah.
You know, and if they don't, we can put that in R4 as a conditional use and leave it there.
I think it makes sense to blend the 2 together and expand the uses, bring the ones from R3. Not, maybe not every one, but consider each one at a time and certainly move some of it into R2. So which part do you want in R4, Simone?
So I'm thinking, maybe I was thinking of something else when I was looking at that now, because now I'm looking at the DB2 and stuff like that has changed completely, so just looking at this one compared to the other one.
I would have taken the DB2 even closer to Old Post Road, if I were left the way.
But having said that, I think we still need to do something with this language, whether that's across the board, as you presently suggested is, or maybe it's 2, 4 as the only applicable districts for these cluster subdivisions, but we need something in the comp plan to address that.
Well, if the objective, I mean, if we look at some of the other sections of our inventory, which we are not looking to change right now, and one of the things that is touted on a regular basis is preserving rural character and open space for environmental and wildlife purposes. And so one of the primary mechanisms that has been used has been this open space subdivision requirement across the board. So that it's not limited just to one particular district, it's in every district.
And I wouldn't object to including some language in here that would encourage that open space that's to be dedicated to the roadway.
That makes no sense.
I just said encourage, if you can do it, why not?
Well, let me just explain why I said it makes no sense. If you're looking at it from the standpoint of wildlife, you don't want to push all your deer into the road. You want it to be backland, so it can be interconnected. Because the larger the parcels, the more wildlife and the more variety you have. When you chop it up, it creates barriers for the movement of wildlife.
I wasn't worried about wildlife.
I know you weren't.
And I would say with most subdivisions, I would agree with you, because with most subdivisions, quite frankly, with
Wildlife can go there.
with the ring with the wedding ring you put of open space around the project does very little for wildlife propagation.
Except I've seen it personally next door.
Oh, sure, they'll move through a corner that's 10 feet wide. They'll they'll move through a corner that's
No, they
5
just
feet
moved
wide.
everything in the back, they, all the open space, you know, they just clustered it in front, and it's all back.
Well, then what you could say is that, you could say that open spaces should be linked to adjacent open spaces, or, and where possible, also open space be placed along the road in order to protect rural character, to foster rural character. Right? And deer
That's
are
what I'm
out in the
thinking.
road no matter what you do, because I dodge them every night, I'll dodge them tonight.
Well, certainly having them linked whenever possible, that makes a great deal of sense.
That's important.
But I would still
Well,
want to see.
then we have a problem, then we have the issue on, are we trying to protect, what is rural character?
Well, exactly.
Rural character is
It's not an issue,
visual,
it's
as
an
what,
opinion.
rural character is actually probably more visual than anything else.
But it's not entirely visual. You and I have had this discussion before.
It's both, it's visual culture.
I mean, it's one thing, if it looks nice, but there's nothing there, you haven't really nailed it.
Looks like, but that's the way we are, we're Americans.
Okay, you rest my case. Thank you.
No, I think I just made mine.
Ah,
Rural is a visual, I mean, if we look at the very fact that we have that scenic corridor area there, that's all visual. That is not an ecological and environmental decision that the previous comp plan committee made. That was a visual decision.
Well, it was a visual decision, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it covered all the bases. However, it's 9 o'clock. This discussion can go on till midnight. It probably shouldn't.
No,
So we do have one important decision that we need to make
I'm ready.
before we leave this, and that is our next meeting date. Because our next scheduled meeting date is voting.
Oh,
well, I won't be
here.
And then the week after that, the following Tuesday, is the holiday. It's Veterans Day.
Wow.
And then if we're not really careful, we're going to run smack into Thanksgiving. So, do you have any thoughts on when we want to meet next? Could be December at this rate.
Can we bump another night? Or-
Yeah.
Well, is there another night besides the Tuesday that makes everybody happy? Thursday's around for a good number of us.
What about the 28th of October? Is that too soon? It's 3 weeks from today.
I just have to think for a minute.
Is that, when did the selectmen meet? Is it not a second or what is it?
No.
28th is Tuesday.
Tuesday, no, so.
Right.
I don't have anything definite then, but Todd has been trying to get the EDC to meet twice a month, and if that happens, that second meeting probably would be on the 28th.
Are you gonna meet once this month?
Are we gonna meet once this month? We already met once this month.
Oh, really?
And you guys do,
I was gonna say it was early in the month, it might have been the second.
Second, last Thursday?
No, first, oh, no.
Yeah, last Thursday was the second.
Oh, this month, I'm sorry, yeah, next week,
It's
I would
the
imagine.
14th?
yeah.
Okay,
We normally meet the second
Right.
Tuesday.
right.
And what I'm saying is, if Todd bumps that up to 4 meetings, it probably will go to the second Tuesday and the fourth Tuesday.
I don't know if it's going to.
Well, he might not, if he doesn't, then.
Tell me a while.
Oh, you already have engagement. All right, well, is the 28th agreeable to everyone? Okay, then unless something changes, we will do it on the 28th and pick up this discussion. I'll type up what changes we made and get those out to you folks. And then I guess, well, we'll probably just kind of continue with our current agenda because we're obviously not done. We need to take a look at some of the areas in R1 and R1 primarily, and see if maybe they should be moved out of there. You know, identify some of those large lots and split lots, and then we need to start talking about, you know, who the landowners are and getting a meeting together to meet with them.
Also, Madam Chairman, if I may, I also would like to have a definitive boundary between the R district and the R1 district, but we never did make a definitive boundary. We kept the existing boundary, and it does not respect property lines.
Well, yeah, that's kind of my point, is look at those split lots, and get the people in here who own those lots, or at least get feedback from them in terms of, you know,
By the 28th?
no, not by the 28th, no. I'm thinking,
It's not gonna happen.
I'm thinking, you know, maybe the December meeting.
Do you think it would be to discuss a little further the proposal that was made to extend the R1 down to the main turnpike?
Yeah, go back and look at the proposed boundaries for R1, both increasing it in the one place and maybe decreasing it in the other, and then we'll have a series of lots that we need to talk about. Yeah.
Maybe I'll have some better maps by then.
I like the crayon approach, it was very effective.
I'm gonna keep it.
I don't blame you, I wouldn't get rid of it, that's valuable work you did. Unless somebody has something
Would
else,
you like to entertain?
I would love to.
I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn for the evening.
I'll second that.
There we go, all those in favor?
Yeah.
I think that was pretty nice.
Close to attacking.
Well, only when you say that silly statement about wildlife. He's a very sensible guy. And then I say, his mother.
Small steps.
Not about and I didn't get a chance the other day to,
But and like I said, Jim was the one that came through and we tried years and
We were supposed to go to some.
And Joe's thing at the same town meeting. So,
it's not decided, it's
so we talked about that.
like your stuff.
There's no easy way to fix it. When's that? So, but it's still,
We're gonna hire somebody. We are, but it's gonna be just, it's just gonna be someone who's gonna be part-time. Is that a good answer? Is that a good answer, John?
See you next week.
So, he says, he says,
Yeah, the green thumbs.
I remember the priest looked at it, and I was wondering why that cat always does.